Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from Yellowcat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. Let's get started. Redditors who walked off the job without notice, what straw broke the camel's back, part 4. I worked at a mall store that was closing down during the holiday season with the hope of getting a full-time job afterwards. Supervisor was a slacker, but I can get past that without a problem. A lot of work goes into getting ready for the holiday. Corporate tries to update the store, which ends up being a waste of money, and then there's a big coupon event that weekend. I get there on time and am put in a new department. It's coupon day, so everyone's off and the other supervisor can't answer basic questions about his department or the coupons. Cool. I thought I'd stay in my corner and work as a cashier for the day. After taking an hour to explain these coupons over and over, I finally get the customer who can't make their mind go. To show her how it works and the different totals, she had a coupon book and wanted to use some coupons that couldn't be combined. I rang her up 30 different times in different ways. What's the difference? It's less than $20 after saving more than $70 on a total of about $150. When I'm done, I give her the stuff, say goodbye, and start talking to the next customer. She just sighs and says, "I think you're wrong," then stops moving. "Look at me, please." I say okay without giving it much thought as I punch out of work and type in my numbers. I take off my name tag, look her straight in the eye, and say, "Well, I'm not. You're effing wrong. Good luck finding an employee who can fix it." I left. I was the only cashier on the second floor, and the lines on the first floor were very, very long. As I go down the escalator, I can see her still standing there with her open mouth as if she has no idea what's going on. I think she thought I was going to come back to the counter or something. They called me the next day to ask me to come back, but I chose to spend the holidays with my family instead. Soon after, I found another job in retail. That store closed about 2 months later. It was the small chalkboard that showed what soups we were serving that day. I used to work at a bistro a long time ago. Did work for money, but not in public. Even though I was in my late teens, I had no idea what the F I was doing legally. Neither did the rest of the staff. The day manager was my best friend, and I worked right under her. A man named Brian bought the business from the owner. I know his real name was Michael, not Brian, but for some reason my brain thought it was Brian. We used that to our advantage when we lied about him in front of him. In any case, Brian was a jerk. Someone from Miami who worked in business but had no experience with restaurants or food service. He was mean and liked to put other people down. He also did the stupidest things, like not buying cheese that was already sliced. At first, it was too much to handle. Then it turned creepy over time. He thought I was really hot for some reason. I would see him staring at me, joking around, and following me around. One day, I was in the hallway that led from the kitchen to the sitting area. He pressed his whole body against mine and shimmied past me as he touched me. Then he told me to start opening the store by myself with him. I wasn't a manager and didn't have a key. When I told my best friend and her brother how unsafe I felt, he cut me off right away and wouldn't let Brian be alone with a woman in the store. After the fact, my brother got angry and said he will beat the crap out of Brian. I had to calm him down. After the fight, we forgot to change the soup sign the next morning, and when he came in for lunch, he lost it. The only thing that was different between the soup we served the day before and the soup we served that day was the shape of the noodles. We all quit, walked out during lunch rush, and left him alone to deal with it. I should have called the cops on him for the assault, but I was very young and had very low self-confidence. I was scared of him. I was very lucky that I had support that day and had the courage to leave. Later on, we found out that, before the bistro went under, he banned a customer from the bistro because she had a seizure. Horrible excuse for a human being. I asked for a raise, including points of discussion that I was a high performer, awarded, respected, and well-liked. I also said I wasn't getting paid enough and gave salaries for similar jobs. About 1,200 people went to this small 4-year college. Answered, if you can make more money somewhere else, do it. I told him I was going to graduate school in 2 months and sent him an email about it the next day. He said, yeah. It's not a lie when I say I ran that place, or at least kept it running. I was the only person who managed, installed, and fixed the AV, security, and classroom automation systems. I was also the faculty staff council and did daily IT support work. People would also call that guy to fix anything. A lot of friends in athletics because I helped them get all the cool toys to work. Basketball had a really cool system for recording games on video. Anyway, 1.9 months go by and I don't say anything. Come in, do my stuff, and then leave. Wednesday of my last week, I sent an email to the right mailing list where people announce when they're leaving and arriving that it had been a pleasure working there and I'm very upset that the department didn't choose to keep me on. The boss is crazy angry that I'm leaving, years of training behind that he can't replace. He hired 2 people to replace me in the end, plus temporary help, while the new employees are trained. He didn't last long after I left either. He thought I wasn't serious, felt I should have given him more time, etc. I explained, sorry man, I gave you 2 months' notice. Thursday was a great day. Lots of people on campus loved me, and my bosses and great bosses were confused about what was going on. I told many of them the same thing, that despite all the notice, the boss hasn't trained anyone new, with proof of course. I sent many of them the same thing and met many of them in person. Friday, I said goodbye to the construction company that was building a campus center. I was one of 3 people who were tasked with installing fiber, cables, and hardware for security and networks. I got to have all the same conversations with them again. Surprise, jerks, you lost 33% of your staff, and your deadlines are messed up. Remember that installing the conduit will completely mess up your already messed up Gantt chart. The fallout, I now make sextuple what I make there. My boss left shortly after. The president got replaced for a failed building project, which interfered with the opening of classes that fall. The construction company and school had a lawsuit, which the school lost because they didn't provide resources outlined in their contract, me and a couple others, and I didn't burn any bridges, so several of the very good people I worked there with are still my friends. All just as an F you for not giving me a $5,000 a year raise. Which action of your HOA or neighbors made you dislike them? Part 4. The HOA where my parents live. So, a little backstory. They bought the house from the bank. The last owner lost their home in foreclosure. There's probably a better way to say it, but I'm not good at finance, I'm good at science. Anyway, the neighborhood was mostly middle and working class people when they bought it. It had a fence around it, but no gates. They added a gate at some point. People moved around and home prices went through the roof after I was born. Over time, most of the middle class and working class people left. They took the extra money they got from the property's value rise and moved somewhere else. They were swapped out for people who had too much cash and free time. In the neighborhood, we were always known as the white trash family. They tried to have our old beat-up pickup truck towed more than once because they thought it looked bad. With the pedestrian gates, they put in a new electronic security system that breaks often, locking people in and out of the neighborhood. People asked them to turn it off when it broke so they could at least get home, but they said no because homeless people walking through the neighborhood. It was also made so that delivery people couldn't open the car gate, so packages were sent but never delivered because the person couldn't get in. In the neighborhood, you can only park 1 car at a time. People who have grown children, like college students, were hurt by this. That meant parking outside the neighborhood, and when the alarm went off, I had to jump the fence to get home. All H broke loose when our streets were being thrown back together and paved over. The wiring in the ground was ripped up in some way. Before the repaving could be done, we had to wait a month for Time Warner to fix it. During that time, everyone had to park outside the neighborhood and walk in. People couldn't drive on the dirt during that month, so they had to carry 50-pound bags of dog food for a quarter mile. The skylight and the master bedrooms were replaced by a company that they hired, either opt in or opt out to have them changed. It was fine for us, and we had other things to do, so we said no. Then the HOA president told the company to make up new ones and send us a bill. Absolutely hate them. So, our home is on the main road in front of a subdivision, but not part of it. We have a mailbox, while the subdivision has the multiple box thing in their gravel lot. Previously, there was a fence that ran along the edge of our yard, but it was so old that it was fallen over. In any case, the homeowners association hired a company to be responsible for cleaning up the trees that were located around the subdivision. On the other hand, my father, who's a law enforcement officer, awoke in the morning to find the individuals sitting on the fence cutting down our trees. He basically asked them, "What are you doing? Get off our property." The HOA informed the guys that the trees needed to be cut down and made a number of other statements. He threatened to arrest them if they returned, which is an important fact to keep in mind because for the purposes of taxes, the actual property line in the state in which I reside extends into half of the roadway. As a former principal at the school in this area, the current president is an idiot because he attempted to levy a fine against us for our yard, the fence, and the fact that we did not have a fence around our propane tank, among other things. We were not part of the HOA at the time, and our house was constructed prior to the subdivision being established. Back to the whole tree thing, my dad actually went to the county and got a copy of the land plot and told him to go pound sand. My HOA tried to fine me $100, plus late fees of course, because the president's wife had me on video playing with my dog off-leash in a vacant lot across the street on land that we did not own. When I returned, he confronted me and informed me that I would be subject to a fine. I was putting my dog on a leash at the time because I was aware of how foolish they are. After I informed him that they were unable to levy a fine against me for engaging in an activity that occurred off of the property of the association, he insulted me and issued a fine to me later that month. I racked up an additional $100 in late fees because they refused to drop it. My property manager advised me on multiple occasions that it would be more convenient for me to pay the fine and move on with my life, as the condo documents stipulate that if I challenged the fine in court, I would be required to pay both court fees and attorney fees. I told him if it would be so easy, then he could pay for me. He declined, and he stated that he does not believe in taking sides. Rather, he simply follows the board's instructions. After 3 to 4 months of this back and forth nonsense, I finally called a friend who's an attorney and asked him to look over our rules. After 10 minutes, he called me back, laughing at how poorly the rules and regulations were written. He was confident that no court would order me to pay any kind of fine for this particular instance. In addition, due to the way the documents were written, they were not permitted to levy a fine against me even if I was present on their premise without first filing a lawsuit against me in a court of law. Now, I bring all of this information to the attention of the property manager because the board was too big a pile of S to communicate with me directly, and I tell him that if the fine is not dropped, I will pay it and then sue the board for breach of contract. He told me that I could do that, but that would be suing myself, which is not something I would want to do. In addition, I would be responsible for paying the attorney fees that they would incur because they would have to hire a lawyer to enforce the rules. It was then that I got my crayons out and told him that the lawyer would not be enforcing the docs, they would be defending them. As a result, I would not be the one to reimburse him for his fees. The fine was dropped later that week and we moved out a couple of months later. Never again. For as long as I've lived here, our homeowners association has been a little bit shady. This has been the case. There are some homeowners who appear to have a grudge against the board members and they're willing to do anything in their power to harass them. As a matter of habit, one member of the HOA board would sit outside the home of the homeowners for hours on end solely searching for violations that would result in the homeowner being written up and fined. We had this guy trespass in our backyard, which caused my daughter a great deal of anxiety. However, we did not have a video of him, so we were unable to take any action. The member of the board was unaware that they had a camera trained on him throughout the entire time, including when the children were playing outside in the front yard. The recordings were handed over to the authorities by the homeowner, and the board member was taken into custody for the crime of felony stalking the previous week. Came as a surprise that there are not just 1, but 3 vacancies on the board, and new elections are scheduled to take place the following month. If you want to watch the part 3, click the link here. We're very, very glad to see you all in the comments again. Many thanks for your support.